Hi, it's Michael. Today's talk about why, despite of our best intentions not to be angry, not to react in an angry way, not to be violent, and so on, why do we still fall into those emotions, into anger, violence, and make no mistake, fantasizing about violence, like thinking about punishing somebody, thinking about revenge, getting even with somebody. That's all violence. Violence doesn't have to be manifested physically. Even thoughts of violence count as violence. So why is this happening? This talk is addressing at least two of the major contributors that must be understood and must be addressed if the intention is to be free of this merry-go-round of emotions and violence and stuff like that. So whenever something happens that we cannot deal with for whatever reason, we either don't have the energy for it, or we don't have the answers for it, how to deal with it, then an emotional block gets recorded in the body, or emotion gets recorded in the body, and the recording is like a block in the body, wherever it may be recorded, in an organ or whatever. It is recorded in the body, and this can happen both at the conscious and subconscious level. We can be aware of the conscious emotions, but most of the time we are not aware of the subconscious emotions, and there can be zillions and zillions of these subconscious emotions, emotional blocks recorded in our system, and that starts right from the conception. And actually some of these blocks, some of these emotional blocks may have to be carried from lifetime to lifetime, from incarnation to incarnation, until they get resolved. So, and on top of it, if we do something that is not congruent, that is not harmonious with our true nature, and what is our true nature? Our true nature, as it is said, is to be loving, compassionate, understanding, peaceful. So when we do something that is not in line with our true nature, then again it creates fragmentation in our system. It also contributes to emotions being recorded in our body, emotional blocks. And so even when we have the best intentions to be as best behaving, to be the most positive, to be the most loving and understanding, and as our river of life flows, we may even feel good and peaceful and understanding, and as the river of our life energy flows, when it all of a sudden, symbolically speaking, when it all of a sudden comes across the emotional block, like a rock in the riverbed, it all of a sudden creates a turbulence. So you may feel good, and something, it may be an external event, even a little external event, a pitiful event, and it triggers that emotional block, that stored emotional block, and the emotion that is stored behind it comes rushing out, and you explode in anger or even in violence at the slightest provocation, and you don't even understand why. It's because in your system are recorded all these emotional blocks that if they are not released, if they are not purged, if they are not cleared, at some point or another, guaranteed they are going to the surface, exploding to the surface. And when that happens, then a physical symptom happens. You may, depending what the emotion is, obviously, if it's anger, you may explode in anger, you may strike somebody. If the third emotion is of guilt, you may go into fits of guilt and self-punishment and self-flogging. If the third emotion is fear, you may all of a sudden start feeling paranoid, and it almost doesn't matter what the trigger is. If it's something in the future, will I have enough money, will there be enough for my retirement and so on, or will I encounter that idiot again who punched me the last time. Whatever the trigger may be, when your life energy comes across the rock of that stored emotional block, it creates a turbulence, it creates a wave, and that wave manifests in your life as something undesirable. And you wonder, what the heck has happened? It's because of this stuff. At least that's some of the contributors. That's obviously not the entire picture, but this has to be addressed. So how can it get addressed? So there are two major tools, or three major tools we have, and they are awareness, clearing of the neuro-emotional blocks through a healthcare technique, and positive affirmations, also called prayers. These are extremely important, and again, they need to be addressed if this is going to diminish and eventually dissolve completely. So, awareness. When we are in the present moment, when we are aware of our actions, of what is happening, we have the choice of reacting or not reacting, of just observing or participating. If we are not aware, then we have no such choice. We participate whether we want or not want. Okay, so we have to be aware if we want to have the freedom of not participating in the emotion that just bursted into our consciousness. And so how to be aware? Well, we need to be in the present moment, and we need to be centered. When we project our mind into the future or into the past, then we are not present, we are not aware, we are running on autopilot, and when we are running on the autopilot, all shit breaks loose, literally. Okay, accidents, diseases, all these emotions bursting through, and so on. So we have to be aware first. So being in the present moment, not worrying about the future, not rehashing the past, being in the present moment always, that is connected with breathing, with the breath. If you observe closely, you will notice that when you think about the future or the past, your breathing is shallow and erratic. So, if you're breathing deeply and relaxedly, you're pretty much always in the present. Pretty much always in the present. Relaxed, natural, deep breathing. Nothing is forced. Deep, relaxed, natural breathing, nothing is forced. And being in the present moment with your awareness, with your mind. Sure, thoughts come and go, and the thoughts will try to sway you to think about the future or to think about the past. The thoughts will try to get you to think about the past or the future. They will try to do that always. But when you're in the present, aware and breathing, you can refuse that. You have the freedom to refuse that. And when you refuse it, they will take on lesser importance, and eventually they will start diminishing. So that was the awareness. The second thing is positive affirmation, asking existence, asking higher power for help. This is extremely important, and it cannot be overstated. As it's been said, what seems like an impossible task to overcome for the human mind, for the human will, is but a feather to the higher power, to existence. So, asking existence, the higher power, for help in helping you be more peaceful, more understanding, more compassionate, more healthy, whatever it is extremely important. Also, because in doing that, you're acknowledging your own center, your own essence, because the higher power is your essence, it is your center, it is your true nature. So by asking for its help, you're acknowledging your true beingness. So obviously that's important. If you just wave it off, shrug it off, you're just waving off an incredible power source. Why would anybody do it? Now, you may not like the term God, you may not like a certain religious terms for whatever reason, but you don't have to call it God, you don't have to call it in religious terms. You can call it existence, higher power, or my true self, whatever you want to call it, but it's important to ask it for help. And the third important tool is clearing the emotional blocks with the help of a healthcare technique when it is possible, and the healthcare technique is neuro-emotional technique, NET, neuro-emotional technique. It is designed to detect these hidden emotional blocks within your system, and it is designed to help them clear. And when that emotional block is cleared, that stored emotion is released, and the life energy can flow better, and the energy is uplifted to the next higher level possible under the circumstances. Now, obviously, when you ask the existence, the higher power, the divine, whatever you want to call it, for help, it helps you clear these blocks as well. And you obviously need to help it in your own ways, so which means being aligned with positiveness, despite of these violent emotions sometimes coming to the surface, and it's going to happen. It's part of the human nature in this world. So even when it comes to the surface, still it can be said overriding it with your positive intentions. And a huge part of all of this is also staying away from toxins. Toxins are another thing that fragment our system and that contribute to emotional blocks, to stored emotions. And as it's been said in the talks on this YouTube channel, the worst, or one of the worst major toxins that almost everybody takes is alcohol. Even in supposedly weak forms like beer and wine, it is extremely toxic. The alcohol attacks the liver. It makes people angry and vicious. And of course there are other toxins, drugs, even supposedly weak drugs like cannabis, smoking, coffee, pork, and other stuff. Smoking, alcohol, drugs, it's probably the worst trio, and Buddhism calls them the basis of negligence. So we need to stay away from the toxins, and there are mental toxins such as negative entertainment, horror movies, many action movies, fighting, boxing, and so on. So all this has to be taken into account and addressed. Oh, and one more thing, here comes a secret weapon. And the secret weapon to help you with this getting out of this merry-go-round of the emotions and violence and so on are meditations, especially silent meditations. Meditations are a state of no mind. If you come across and it's called a meditation but it uses mind, like so-called, what is it called? Transcendental meditation that uses mantras or imaging, that's not meditation because it uses mind. Meditation basically means going beyond the mind, and probably the most basic or the most powerful meditation may be the silent meditations. So silently meditating, again, it is sitting comfortably so you can forget about the body, breathing deeply and naturally, and staying with the awareness in the current moment. Thoughts will come, yapping in the head will come, that's unavoidable. Just ignore it, don't participate in it, ignore it. And and keep on sinking, relaxing into the awareness in the present, into the present moment. That is the basis of silent meditation. Okay, so again, quick recap. We get angry and violent or whatever emotions, and we action those emotions, we participate in them because we are not in the present moment. We are in the past, in the future with our mind. We need to be in the present. And when something occurs that we cannot deal with, either because we don't have enough energy to deal with it, or because we don't have enough answers, enough information to deal with it, then the emotion gets recorded in our body and it creates a stuck energy, an emotional block, and it stays there until it is released. The divine, the existence, the higher power can help us and helps us release them when we are aligned with it. When we are aligned with it. We are aligned with it when our intentions are positive. We may sometimes explode in anger and so on. That is part of the human nature that can happen. But overall, our direction is positive, our intention is positive, our energy is positive. So under those conditions, the divine existence, the higher power, helps us. If we depart from this and we start entertaining negative things, porn, mixed martial art fights, WWE, horror movies, horror books, we fantasize about violence, we depart from our essence from the higher power, from the divine, and when we depart from it, it cannot help us. It's not that it would refuse to, even though sometimes it may so, if somebody gets really out of control. But overall, it's because we depart from it. So we need to return back to the center, to our positive intentions, staying away from toxins, staying away from negative entertainment, being in the present moment, being aware of our actions. And if something occurs, then if a negative emotion comes to us, or a strong emotion comes to us, we don't have to action it. We can be just aware of it and don't resist it. If you fight it, if you resist it, you're basically actioning it, and that is not helpful at all. You're basically participating it. Don't resist it, don't go with it, observe it, witness it. You have the power to do it, you can do it, especially with divine help. And if you sometimes go astray, so to speak, and you slip and you burst out in anger or you strike somebody, then pray for understanding the situation, in a way for forgiveness, feeling regret and making sure, doing your best, as already been mentioned, not to repeat it, as best as you can, of course, under the given circumstances, and using neuro-emotional technique and chiropractic along with neuro-emotional technique, that helps. So that's it for this talk. This talk was not designed to address everything. That would take a long time to discuss everything. This was just an overview of the major contributors that everybody has to address and has to be aware if there is to be progress in this. And that's it for this talk. Wishing you a healthy and joyful life. Michael out.